Now I invite all of you to dive into the content of episode 11. This story, as narrated by Dean Shadow. The sound of a single crisp clap echoes through the room. Huong carried a basket on her back. Although it wasn't raining, nor was the sun too harsh, she hurried past the row of water stalls, her face lowered, not daring to look at anyone. Yet it seemed that everyone in the village was afraid of Huong, except for Thach, the man who had returned to the village after wandering. A few days ago, he had let Huong pass by. Only then did Bem release hand, covered Thach's mouth, and then softly said, "If you want to die, then die alone. Don't drag us down with you. The whole village wants nothing to do with that mother and child of hers. Sir, please let me send the money for the drinks. I'm heading back now." Bem stood up to pay. "Money already. Hurry up and walk." Some people also chatted among themselves as they left. Only Thach remained. He tried to understand what made the people of Fuong Nghia village scared. Thach then asked the little girl, "Has that made those people so afraid of Baka, the shop owner? Could it be?" Before Thach could finish his sentence, the shop owner grabbed fly swatter, waved it around, cleared her throat. "Why are there so many flies here? Take that and that." She leaned in and told Thach, "Let it go. Don't say anything more. Please just pay for your drink and head home. Honestly, I've already said things I shouldn't have. It's best if you just forget about it. And listen, I'm warning you, don't believe in crazy rumors, and don't foolishly go snooping around at Za's house or at Huong and her mother's place. You just got back from far away, so I'm giving you this advice." "All right." Thach fumbled to pull out some money to pay, then stood up to leave. As he stepped away from his seat, he almost literally bumped into an old man who was approaching from behind. The old man was walking so silently, Thach was startled. The old man wore a knotted headscarf and a brown outfit, with a head full of white hair. He had lived long and worn shoes for many years. His appearance was simple, his face kind and gentle, and he smiled softly, saying, "Sorry, young man, I didn't see you." Seeing this, Thach said, Thach, you are the one who almost hit him, man, so why are you scolding him?" Thach was still upset about what had happened earlier, and now being called out made him even angrier. He snapped back. "But if you can see, you should avoid. Person not visible." Thach grumbled and stormed off. The old man carrying the cloth bag was none other than Master Leon, who slowly made his way down the mountain, heading southwest. Master Leon had arrived at the village of Fuong Nghia and stopped at a roadside tea stall. Master Leon greeted the stall owner, then smiled, and said, "Could I please have a cup of water?" The stall owner replied, "I'll get you a cup of fresh voi tea to cool off. Please excuse that young man earlier. He was upset about something and acted rudely. Thank you. Please have a seat." Master Leon nodded and replied, "It's really nothing. Don't worry about it. May I ask, where exactly are we in Feng Chao commune?" The stall owner poured a cup of fresh voi tea, placed it on the table in front of Master Leon, and answered, "This is Fuong Nghia village, sir. If you keep going, you'll reach Phuong Bai. Once you pass Phuong Bai, you'll be out of Feng Chao commune. You're not from around here. Are you looking for some relatives?" Master Leon said, "I'm heading southwest for some business. Before coming here, I overheard some people passing by talking about the death. If I may ask, sir, in this area, has anything strange happened recently in our village? Something about a death? Something unusual?" "Probably just some folks who had a few drinks, just gossiping around here. I wouldn't dare say anything about our village. As for the death, that happened in another village, sir." He grabbed a rag to wipe up some tea that had spilled across the table. The innkeeper replied to Master Leon. Taking a sip of tea, Master Leon continued, "Just now, which village did you mention? Is it far from here?" The innkeeper pointed toward the road ahead and answered, "That's Phuong Bai village. It's not that far away. Phuong Bai and Fuong Nghia are right next to each other, sir. Please don't blame me for being nosy. But if you're planning to head over to that village, I sincerely advise you not to." Following the direction the innkeeper pointed, Master Leon gently asked, "I'm just a traveler passing through. If there's anything I should know, I hope you can tell me. You the details. I have some money here. I'll give it to you, sir." Before he could finish, innkeeper quickly waved him off. "Goodness, put your money away. I only take payment for drinks." Seeing how honest and sincere the young man looked with his kind face, clearly not a local around here, "So I'll tell you first, that over there, There is nothing to worry about, but these past few days I've heard rumors scary events Phuong Bai village. Sitting here selling drinks. Travelers often stop by to chat, into the conversation, so also waiting. Bits and pieces of information. Those who went over to Master Leon's side. The innkeeper raised his hand to cover his mouth and whispered, "Just recently the villagers have been gossiping. Graves and tombs. A seer from, for some unknown reason, literally, died in the cemetery of Phuong Bai village. And that's not all. I heard that in just the past 2 or 3 days, some people have died. It's as if they were taken by spirits or oppressed by demons. That's why I told you not to go over there now, through this time. Better safe than sorry." While he was hesitating in the moment, the shop owner was suddenly startled by Bem's loud call. "Shop owner, have you seen my bunch of keys anywhere?" The shop owner quickly replied, "How would I know? Wherever you left your house keys, that's where they'll be." He rummaged through a few places. The plastic candy box, the medicine container. Bem grinned broadly. "Luckily, I forgot it's still here. Earlier, busy with medicine that I completely forgot. Let me have it back, okay?" Holding the bunch of keys, Bem bid farewell to the shop owner, then left the shop to head home. Right while shop owner was busy tidying up, getting the lunchbox ready for lunch. Master Leon had already left the money on the table, thanked. The shop owner stood up and walked away. The shop owner, seeing he had a glass of pennywort juice but left behind a whole 10,000 dong, called out, "Miss, you forgot your change. Miss, you left too much." The shop owner called out, but Master Leon, indeed, kept silently walking down the road, heading toward Phuong Bai village. It was close to noon, but the sky was still gloomy and overcast. Watching old man's figure gradually disappear behind the roadside trees, the shop owner sighed, mouth, and said, "This old man is so strange. I told you." Even after being told that, without any hesitation, he just allowed it to remain as it was. Meanwhile, in Phuong Bai village at the same time, the villagers were extremely bewildered. After Lan went mad and stabbed and injured his lover, he fled. Chuan's tragic death, a significant event, was also discovered by everyone, making everything more complicated than ever. With their curious and inquisitive nature, many people flocked to Mr. Nem's house to catch the news. Amidst the crowd, Mrs. Hien's cries could be heard, wailing to the heavens, pleading to be allowed to claim her son's body. "Chuan, are you in there? It's your mother, Chuan." "You police, let me in," she shouted. To some people, she began to show signs of agitation, encouraged, "Let people in, or do you have, because you have something to cover up. We need to see the body. Don't think just because you're the police you're above us. Let her in." Under the immense pressure from the crowd, Mr. Kha inside also started to feel uneasy. Looking at Jian, Mr. Kha said, "Comrade Jian, what should we do if this keeps going on? The people will break down the door and storm in." Right at that moment outside, a loud whistle sounded repeatedly, followed by the voice of Lieutenant Manon, booming through a megaphone. "Everyone is requested to move away from the scene so that the authorities can carry out their duties. We ask everyone to disperse and maintain order." Accompanying men were 5 officers from the district police. These individuals had been dispatched to Phuong Bai village to assist the local police in investigating and verifying the incident. These 5 officers were from the city's criminal investigation police. The team leader, currently Captain Mai, personally sent Lieutenant Colonel Ma Van Kim, the head of the city's criminal investigation team, for social order, along with 4 accompanying officers. Together, Lieutenant Man after Man was on duty, also sought guidance and directives. There was also, as you might have guessed, another reason. It was Man and Lieutenant Colonel Kiem had a close relationship. Lieutenant Colonel Kiem was actually Man's mentor. Completely different from the local militia, with the presence of the regular security forces, combined with the authority of a lieutenant colonel. Expert in criminal investigation, crime prevention. Immediately upon arriving, Lieutenant Colonel Kiem managed to calm the curious crowd gathered in front of Mr. Nem's house. Man realized the woman was the mother of Chuan, the person Man had met earlier, helping Mrs. Hien up. Man immediately said, "I'm truly sorry for this action, ma'am. It's just that we were afraid you might become too agitated upon hearing the news." Mrs. Hien, trembling, said, So you're saying my son is dead?" Man nodded slowly and then said, "I'm very, very sorry, but when we arrived, we found him already hanged. Dead. Let me take you inside. You go home. Average." With that, Man assigned another police officer to help Mrs. Heen into the house. Each of her steps seemed as if she might collapse to the ground. Before even reaching the house, Mrs. Heen spotted her son's shoes and backpack. That very morning, Chuan had been wearing them, and now they were left outside on the porch. Tears kept streaming down uncontrollably. About just 20 minutes earlier, Mrs. Hyen had been scattering rice for the chickens when she heard voice of a neighbor shouting. She rushed and was crying out, "Oh my God, over there, someone's dead. Something terrible has happened." Ever since Mr. Kha, for a long time, left with a few others, she had been feeling anxious, restless, and uneasy. Now, hearing the neighbor say that, she hurriedly asked, What happened? Mrs. Soen? The neighbor, Tian Juan, pursed her lips and hissed, "No time to explain. Run out to the road right now. And see, that boy Lan is holding a knife and stabbing old lady Tin. She's about to die. I'm telling you." After stabbing her, he even shouted that Chuan was dead. Chuan hanged himself at Mr. Nem's house. Damn it, that son of Tin's is acting like a madman. He is like a crazy guy. Night. People were lying there. He was laughing, running around. "Run a bit. Mess, you're Chuan. Unsure if it's true or not, but old lady Ting is still family after all. And she lives close to your house. So I thought I should let you know so you could go and see for yourself." Right at that moment, Mrs. Hien trembled and dropped basket of rice onto the ground, her face stricken with fear. Pale, stunned, she stumbled out, rushing onto the road. When she arrived, the villagers had already taken old lady Teen to the clinic. Only a few people remained, and when they saw Mrs. Hien, they repeated things that Tien Soan had said. So Mrs. Hien hurriedly ran barefoot to Mr. Nem's house. She ran while crying, not knowing whether it was because of the shock of her mother's overwhelming grief or some other reason. The closer she got to Mr. Nem's house, the more her heart ached unbearably. Tears streamed down her face. Gritting her teeth, she clung to the gate of Mr. Nem's house, screaming, calling out the name of her unfortunate son. Man gave a slight nod, signaling Jian to lift the white cloth covering the body so that Mrs. Hien could see. When the cloth was lifted, and she looked at the cold, stiff corpse and Chuan's pale blue face, Mrs. Hien collapsed onto the floor and almost fainted on the spot. At the same time, Lieutenant Colonel Kiem literally stepped forward. Seeing the chaotic scene, looking at all the people present at Mr. Nem's house, glancing down at the corpse, Colonel Kiem frowned and said, "You guys are handling this messily. I need a detailed report on all 5 deaths. Details of all 5 deaths within 3. Make sure it's extremely detailed. Is it clear?" Coldly, he moved toward the altar. Standing in center of house, closed his eyes and rested his hands. Lieutenant Kiem tilted head back slightly, took a deep breath, then suddenly opened his eyes, staring intently. Colonel Kiem frowned and said, "This house is not normal. However, there's a faint darkness somewhere. I have a feeling like..." While Mr. Kha had his men conduct a preliminary inspection of the scene as well as the body of the deceased, Man received another piece of unwelcome news. It was about Lan going berserk, grabbing a knife and stabbing a woman named Tin. Meanwhile, this Tin woman was actually the reason why Chuan and Lan sneaked into Mr. Nem's house last night, rummaging around with the intention of finding V. "Have they caught him yet?" Man asked. Jian immediately replied, "Our forces are very thin. When the incident happened, I was still here, only hearing the news reported back by Mr. Kha and him. After committing the crime, he fled to the end of the village and escaped. The militia tried to capture him but failed." "Man, you seem different. Frustrated, weren't you?" Yes, Man was frustrated with his teammates but also angry at himself. The deaths, the series of serious incidents, kept happening right under the police's nose, yet everything just kept getting more and more chaotic. The more time passed, the worse the confusion became. It was this very chaos that even made a calm and composed officer like Man occasionally lose his temper and curse out loud. Man immediately shouted, "Damn it, what the hell? What is going on here?" Ao Kim Tien walked over and patted Man on the shoulder. With a soft voice, he said, "Don't be angry. Losing your temper will unsettle your mind, and when your mind is not at peace, you won't be able to make accurate judgments. I know you're indeed very anxious, eager to get to the bottom of all the deaths that have happened over the past 3 days around Phuong Bai village. But you must remember, haste makes waste. You all are still young and often don't believe in things that scientifically recognized. However, there are things that even science to this day still cannot explain. Sometimes it's necessary to look at things from a different perspective. Just look at Mr. Kiem over there. Man immediately responded. So what you mean, teacher, is that since we're on duty, we should maintain proper forms of address, Oh Kiem said. Man nodded. Chief, what you mean is, let me clarify. The deaths that have occurred in this village carry a mystery related to the spiritual world. Saying this made Man feel completely stunned, especially as there were police officers inside Nem's house. There are other police comrades. Who in the world? A formerly trained police officer, having thoughts that these consecutive deaths were caused by ghosts or evil spirits. At that moment, no one stopped Man. In fact, the others even appeared, very calm in response to what Man had just said, especially the 4 subordinates of Mr. Kiem. They remained cautious and focused, conducting autopsies as well as examining the traces related to the case of the death inside Mr. Nem's house. At this moment, Mr. Kiem now replied, You already have the answer yourself, perhaps. Isn't that why you came to me in the first place? It seems it's time for the two of us to share a common perspective. Being a police officer, so what? Don't think that just because you're a cop, you won't believe. I know there are some high-ranking officers who not only believe but are even superstitious. There are differences between believing and superstition. As for me, personally speaking, I believe, but I'm not superstitious. In fact, there was a case I managed to solve thanks to my dreams. Sounds pretty ridiculous, right? Right? But it's the truth. I didn't dream to solve the case. It's just that I relied on that dream to find clues about the culprit. Saying that might sound unbelievable. 6 years ago, in a murder case, I was actually visited in a dream. Since then, though I trust in such things exist in our lives, the spiritual world truly exists. Alright, I have 3 reports. It's from 4 of Mr. Kiem's subordinates to go through one by one. The first report is from a female police officer who was in charge of the autopsy. This female officer's name is Chi. The report from the chief, based on the details about the crime scene, as well as the preliminary autopsy, indicated that this was a suicide. The victim died around 5 to 6 a.m. Checking the victim's backpack, there seemed to be no prior intention of committing suicide. Inside the backpack were some personal belongings, clothes and money, suggesting that he was planning to go somewhere. And indeed, furthermore, Mr. Kiem responded, so the time of death matches the statement given by the victim's mother. He left early in the morning, around 5 a.m., saying he needed to go to the district for a few days. After returning to the village, he was still cheerful. He quickly left again. However, on the way, he suddenly turned into this house and hanged himself. It already sounds illogical. However, if we review the events around midnight last night, then it becomes a different story. Tien, how is your uncle doing? Tien 1 of Mr. Kiem's 4 subordinates stepped forward and reported. On the altar at the spot where the incense bowl had been moved, ashes from the incense bowl were scattered all over the altar table. Not only that, the entire house had been rummaged through. Under the bed, we found a woman's hair tie, unexpectedly caught on the bed frame. Suddenly, Tien presented the hair tie kept inside the Ziploc bag for Mr. Kiem to examine. The hair tie was a red elastic band. Kiem recalled what Hao had said when they were at Mr. Thin's house, after hearing Lan recount the reason why he and Chuan had searched for Mr. Nem. No wonder yesterday morning I went to Mr. Nem's house to offer incense. We saw Miss Tin coming out. At that moment, I noticed that the bottoms of her pants were dirty. I was about to ask, but she ignored me. Could it be that Miss Tin was also? Are you planning to search for the gold? Man also remembered this detail, so he said to Mr. Kiem, it's very likely that this is a hair tie belonging to the woman named Tin. That Miss Tin is also a relative of Chuan. This brought the issue back to the 3 people and the house. Where Mr. Nem was seeking gold, 1 person has hanged themselves, another was stabbed, and their survival is unknown. 1 person went insane after a crime, fled. Before that, there was also a mysterious death that occurred in the cemetery area. 2 people died beneath a grave, and 1 died at the grave in the center of the graveyard. Could it be that the cause behind all these incidents is gold? Okiem frowned immediately, but didn't. You say that inside the cloth bag recovered from the dead person's hand, there were only pebbles and scraps? Trung took it out to check again. Inside the cloth bag that Chuan was holding, there were still only pebbles. However, looking at the pebbles, Man suddenly remembered something important. Turning to Jin, Man asked, Jen, the photos taken at the scene of Mr. Lam's death yesterday, where are they? Did you bring them here? Jian immediately replied, No, sir. I left them at the station. At the commune police station. Is there something wrong, sir? Man put the cloth bag back into his pocket and said, It's nothing urgent. I'll explain when we get back. Man then said to Mr. Kim, Chief, please kindly give us your detailed and specific instructions. Mr. Kim nodded and replied, Team 3 will stay here to finish up the remaining work, clean up the scene, and return the victim's body to their family. Deploy the local militia forces to patrol and guard the area, preventing anyone else. Break in here. Avoid further occurrence. You two, Man and Jian, take me to the cemetery area of Philip. Take me to the cemetery area. To commit the act of suicide at this place, there was another person who died at the cemetery, right? Man replied, yes. First, the identity of this person has been confirmed. He had no surviving relatives, so for now, his body is still being kept out at the cemetery. Mr. Kim continued asking, earlier, on the way down here, you mentioned that the death of fortune teller was unlike other deaths earlier, right? Man replied, yes, the two people who died out at the cemetery died in a grave that had been dug, but the fortune teller died near the central grave at the cemetery. Moreover, according to the preliminary report from the autopsy conducted by Comrade Jian, there was a mark on the victim's neck. There was a bruise and a bleeding wound, suspected to have been caused by a sharp cold object. If the two previous deaths were predicted to be due to falling, shooting, one death from drowning, and one from a foreign object entering the body, causing death, then the fortune teller's death was most likely caused by external force. In other words, there were signs of homicide. Kiem furrowed his brow and asked, and what about the others, like Mr. Kha, like Tin here? Man simply nodded slightly. Mr. Kim looked at Mr. Kha and Tin, reaching out to shake Mr. Kha's hand. Kim nodded in greeting and then said, hello, Mr. Kha. I am Lieutenant Colonel Maivan. Kim, I heard from the commune police chief about you, the village chief. I truly appreciate your enthusiastic support, as well as the efforts of the Phuong Bai village militia. At the same time, I apologize and hope you will understand the inconvenience this has caused. I only have info on situation in village lately. We really need your support, as well as the support of the villagers. Children in the village support. Next, we to invite you to police to coordinate and work together. Would that be all right with you, perhaps? Faced with the words that carried both authority and understanding from the Lieutenant Colonel, the police Lieutenant Colonel, Mr. Kha nodded and replied, of course, we're more than willing. Helping the officers is the responsibility of the people. Mr. Kim smiled and nodded in thanks to Mr. Kha. Immediately after, Mr. Kim followed Mana and Dian to the village cemetery area, Phuong Bai, where the fortune teller's body lies. Over there, they crossed the bridge leading to the other side of the cemetery. Mr. Kim asked Man, do you think the deaths have occurred in the village might be likely somehow connected? Man immediately replied, it's possible, sir. If my thinking is correct, then all of these things happen in Phuong Bai village. Cannot be stopped yet. However, I also feel powerless because I don't know how to stop it. It feels like we are facing some kind of supernatural mysterious force and that we or anyone else could die at any moment. Mr. Kim chuckled softly. Man, is there something funny about what I said? Ao Kim said, sorry for laughing at the wrong time. I wasn't really laughing at you. I just found what you said very intriguing. 5 tragic deaths within 3 days, seemingly unrelated to each other. Yet there is a deeply connected link between them. Mystery. This is truly a case with a spiritual undertone. I'm very excited to be involved in this. Join the case. 12 noon. At the cemetery of Phuong Bai village, after personally examining the body of the fortune teller and carefully inspecting the scene of death, it was quite surprising when Mr. Kim rejected Man's earlier assumptions and Dian's theory that the fortune teller was beaten to death by an external force using a sharp, cold object. Initially, at first, he disagreed with Mr. Kim, but shortly after, Mr. Kim used arguments and concrete evidence to prove that what he said was completely correct. Chief, the wound at the back of the neck clearly was caused by a strong external force. Could it be that victim struck back of his neck with weapon? That's absolutely absurd. Nonsense! Jian clearly raised an objection. To let Jian finished speaking, Mr. Kim then raised his hand to signal both Man and Jian to step back closer to the fortune teller's body. The fortune teller's body was lying face down. Point to the injury at the nape of the victim's neck. At this moment, Mr. Kim said, "You two, take a close look. On the wound, there are tiny particles sand. Scraped area has a faint white streak." Jian and Man looked and nodded. Man replied, "That's true. But sir, you see, based on the traces on the victim's body, it further proves that the victim was struck by a heavy angular object from behind." Jian also agreed with Man. "Exactly. It could have been a brick, literally. The type of 3-slab brick." Mr. Kim smiled. "In fact, your deduction is completely well-founded. Near the gravesite, too, deaths had occurred near a pile of 3-slab bricks, which belonged to a family who had prepared them for construction after the burial. However, the mark left on the back of the victim's neck was not caused by a 3-slab brick. The white streak running from the nape down to near the victim's neck was a layer of lime used to coat the grave." As he spoke, Mr. Kim walked toward the grave located in the center of Phuong Bai village cemetery, which was also where Man had discovered the fortune teller's body earlier that morning. He approached the grave, which was built up to chest height. Although the grave was constructed in a rounded shape, its structure still had edged borders along the brick rim. This was the spot where the young man fell and landed on the victim's body. "Right?" Kim asked Man. Man immediately replied, "Absolutely yes, sir, right away." Mr. Kim pointed to the edge of the grave. Following his gesture, both Man and Dian noticed that there were impact marks on the edge of the grave. "Have impact marks. Maybe in here, a small section caused the cement edge to break off. If you look carefully and closely, you can see traces of blood, sand, along with a white streak found on the wound, which is actually cement, and the white lime coating on the grave." At this point, Dian stammered, "So what does that mean?" Mr. Kim immediately said, "It means the victim fell backward, hitting the back of their head on the edge of the grave, literally causing the injury we see. From that, we can deduce that the victim was not attacked aside from the bruise on the back of the neck. The victim's body shows no signs of scratches or marks." Beaten illogical, Mr. Kim's attention to detail made Mana and Dian realize they had overlooked too many issues and had hastily drawn several an incorrect conclusion, likely. Thus, this was not a murder case. Murder, like inevitable death, just before. A murder, just like the previous deaths. They came here on their own, indeed, as if they were seeking death themselves, Man exclaimed, still wearing a serious expression. Still, Mr. Kim continued, "No, compared to the 2 people who died in the pre-dug grave over there, and the young man who hanged himself in the house earlier, the death of this fortune teller is truly different in some way." As he spoke, Mr. Kim began to reconstruct the scene by standing up, turning his back to the grave, right at the spot where the body was found. Mr. Kim then said, "Cross the bridge, step into the cemetery, and go straight ahead to reach the center, which is this grave. That means the victim should have been facing toward the grave. But instead, he had his back turned to the grave and ended up falling and hitting the back of his head on it. Don't you think that's a bit unusual?" "No," Dian immediately replied. "That's exactly how it was. However, we still can't conclude that he wasn't allowed to turn his back to the grave. Who knows? Maybe he was just following the 4 cardinal directions. At home, sometimes I also see my mother performing rituals turning to all 4 directions," Dian said. At this point, Mr. Kim smiled. "That's possible. But when? Burning incense should bow in all directions. But here, based on the scattered joss paper, this fortune teller was only in the process of preparing the incense unlit. The joss paper hadn't been burned. If it were just an accidental fall, that wouldn't be convincing enough. With my experience, I believe the cause of death wasn't due to the wound on the back of the neck." Man immediately frowned. "Then according to you, what was the cause of death?" Mr. Kim replied, "Earlier I examined the victim's body. Based on the signs of rigor mortis and dilation, I agree that the victim showed signs of cardiac arrest. If that's the case, then this would be the primary cause of death ultimately." "Cardiac arrest?" Man and Dian exclaimed at Mr. Kim's speculation. Mr. Kim nodded. That's right, but we still need an official conclusion from the forensic team. The victim did not have any relatives, right? Man replied, Yes, sir, Chief. Mr. Kim continued, If that's the case, we can proceed with a forensic examination through autopsy. You mean you want to perform an autopsy? Man asked. Mr. Kim replied, That's correct. I need to know the exact cause of the victims in order to determine the specific reason behind the incident, death. At the same time, I want to see whether the victim had any medical history or any injury. Because all we've just discussed is that we have based on each person's subjective assumptions. More importantly, there's something here that made the victim appear extremely terrified. Absolutely terrified before dying. Kim's words gave Din chills and instinctively turned his head to look behind. Standing in the desolate and gloomy cemetery, Dian swallowed hard and asked Mr. Kim, Chief, what what is the thing you were referring to? Mr. Kim stood at the spot where the body was discovered, like a fortune teller, his eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. He walked forward a few steps, bent down, and picked up a joss paper note, the red kind printed with images of coins. In front of Man and Dian, Mr. Kim folded the joss paper note and put it into his shirt pocket. Then, answering Dian's question, So that could be as a person or maybe a ghost who arranges everything. Then returned to the commune police headquarters. I want to see some of the things you guys collected after the death of the shop owner. Gold shop owner. The rain continued to pour. After an entire morning of rain, the village of Phuong Bai was shrouded in a veil of mist, blanketed in thick gloomy fog and murky. The sound of rain and croaking frogs echoed through the cemetery of Phuong Bai village. The police removed the fortune teller's body from the cemetery. Chuan's body was also returned to his family. The rain grew heavier with each passing moment. The villagers no longer ventured out onto the streets. They returned home, gripped by a growing sense of fear and unease. In just a few days, several people had already died. A series of terrifying deaths occurred one after another. But this was indeed only the beginning of a horrifying disaster that was slowly beginning to take shape. The rain poured down relentlessly, rotting the earth and sand. It fell as if trying to wash away everything along the road back to village after a trip to the commune to work with the police officers. Mr. Kha squinted and pushed forward, rain lashing against his face and the road, his eyes blurred in the downpour. But Kha still recognized that he had cycled back to the entrance of Phuong Bai village. Just as he passed by, Mr. Kha saw something under almond tree. The day before, Lan and Chuan had still stored chairs and set up a tarp to keep watch. It looked like there was a figure, literally just sitting there. Too many strange things had happened in the village. Unusual. Mr. Kha should have ridden home quickly, the sooner the better. But for some reason he stopped and wiped away the raindrops streaming down his face. Mr. Kha suddenly called out, Who's there? Who's sitting over there? Like that. In the pouring rain, sitting beneath the tarp, flapping in the wind, swaying unsteadily, letting rain blow in, sat an old man with a thin frame, his clothes soaked through by the rain. The wind blew the turban off his head, causing it to fall onto the muddy ground. His white hair flowing loosely in the wind, falling down. Half his face was dirty, half his head exposed in the late afternoon. But in the midst of heavy rain and strong winds, with everything dark and overwhelmed by shadows, the concept of day or night no longer held any meaning. It was eerie. Chan propped his foot from the vehicle and approached the almond tree. As he was walking, Mr. Kha was startled by the sight of a figure sitting under the tarp. The wind howled violently. Two corners of the tarp had been tied to two branches of the almond tree. The other two corners were tied to a bamboo pole to the ground. The strong wind kept blowing through, making it harder and harder for the bamboo pole to stay upright. The rope came loose, and one of the two ends of the bamboo pole fell onto the dirt and rock-covered road. The tarp was blown by the wind to the base of the almond tree. Brushing aside the hair covering in his face, he also heard someone calling out, so he literally stood up. Thunder roared across the sky, and a flash of lightning lit up the entire space in a bleak, gloomy light. The lightning only made the image of the old man with snow-white hair sitting in the rain under the tarp became terrifying, especially when old man raised both hands to brush aside his soaking, drenched hair. His gaze turned toward Mr. Kha. "Oh my God! Mother's back!" he screamed. Mr. Kha turned and ran away, and seeing the old man quickly reached out and called after him. "Wait, I'm not just a ghost, I'm a human!" Terrified and panicked, plus the muddy path becoming slippery whenever it rained. After just a few steps, Mr. Kha tripped and fell flat into a puddle of mud. It took great effort to struggle to his feet, but before he could stand up, old man with snow-white hair was already standing right in front of him, reaching out a hand to help. Mr. Kha was startled, but he still hadn't recovered from the shock and hadn't figured out whether this was a person or a ghost, so he didn't dare make contact. Seeing the frightened look on Mr. Kha's face, the old man smiled and reassured him. "Don't be afraid. I really am indeed not a ghost. Maybe my appearance scared you. I'm just someone from afar, and while I was on the road, I got caught in a heavy rain. I saw the top cover, so I hid there to avoid the rain. No, don't believe me. Just try holding my hand. A dead person's hand indeed wouldn't have any warmth." Regaining his composure after the old man's words, looking closely, Mr. Kha saw that the old man wasn't scary at all. On the contrary, his face was very gentle. Along with that were kind eyes and warm voice. When he took the old man's hand, Mr. Kha could feel warmth in the old man's palm. Even though it was cold and rainy, the old man's hand was quite strangely warm. At that moment, Mr. Kha believed the person standing in front of him was not a ghost. Mr. Kha stammered, "Hello, sir. I must apologize to you. Error, because of the soul and spirit, especially with all the strange things happening in the village recently. Everyone's scared, seeing ghosts and spirits everywhere. Please forgive me. I'm truly sorry, sir." The old man replied, "I'm the one who should be apologizing for scaring you. The rain was so heavy and it came so suddenly, I couldn't tell which way to go. By the way, could you tell me where this is?" Mr. Kha looked at the old man, and judging by his voice, it seemed like he wasn't from Phuong Chau commune. "This is Fuong Bai village. This banyan tree here is the banyan tree at the entrance of village. Where are you from? What brings you here? Do you have any relatives, or perhaps maybe are you specifically looking for someone in particular?" "This village. To be honest with you, my name is Kha. I'm the head of Phuong Bai village. If you're trying to find someone in this village, just tell me their name and I'll help you find them right away. My name is Huong. I'm just passing through the village on some business, not looking for anyone, and I don't have any relatives here either. I've already frightened the village chief." Oh. The rain began to ease. Looking at the old man with his beard and hair, white as snow, wearing clothes soaked with rain, completely covered in mud, Mr. Kha now said, "With such heavy rain and strong wind, you're out walking on the road isn't safe at all. My house is in the middle of Phuong Bai village. If you don't mind, I'd like to invite you to my home. You can dry your clothes there, and once the rain stops, you can continue on your way." They Luong smiled, then nodded. "Would that trouble the village chief? To be honest, I'm traveling, but I don't have much money on me. People also do not have much money. Also, there is really nothing truly worth repaying." Mr. Kha immediately sighed. "What are you saying? Is that so? Do I look like the kind of person who helps others just to ask for money afterward? Enough talk, you're all soaked already. Please hurry and get on the bike quickly." Mr. Luong sat on the back seat of the bicycle. He was brought home by Mr. Kha, completely drenched, soaked like a drowned rat. When they entered the house, Mrs. Huong, Mr. Kha's wife, was startled when she saw Mr. Luong. "Who is this? Who did you bring home like this? He looks so unfamiliar." Gently pulling husband aside, Mrs. Huong asked Kha. Kha replied, On the way home, I saw him sitting under a tarp, the same tarp Chuan and Lan put up last night at the base of the almond tree. The rain was heavy, and the strong wind had slightly blown the tarp. Get blown away. Man is old. How could he stay out there? I couldn't bear to leave him like that. That's why I helped him back to our house. Hearing that, Mrs. Huong was startled. Oh no, that was so reckless. You don't even know who he is and you brought him back here? Aren't you afraid? And are you sure he's even human? See, I just had a strange feeling when I looked at him. Mr. Kha, understanding, asked his wife to lower her voice. Stop saying nonsense. You're making him look over here. I was scared but checked. He's not a ghost. His hands were warm. Plus, he just looked a bit worn out from the rain. But old man's face was gentle and his eyes were very kind-hearted. Mrs. Huong said, go make some warm tea and get some clothes for the old man to change into. Mrs. Huong nodded and followed her husband's instructions. Once the clothes were dry and his hair was towel-dried, Master Luong tied hair in a high bun. Kha went outside. Mrs. Huong had already prepared the tea and left it ready on the table. Looking at the old man now, Mrs. Huong finally let out a sigh of relief. Just like her husband had said, the old man exuded a gentle, kind-hearted, and warm presence. Please have a seat, sir. A cup of tea to warm your stomach. Mrs. Huong invited Master Luong to sit down with Kha. Tea steamed, light smoke. Mr. Luong, thank you, wife. After briefly introducing himself, Mrs. Huong looked at Master Luong and exclaimed, what did you say? You're how old this year? Is only 65 years old? I would have thought you were over 70. Honestly, you look at least a full zodiac cycle older than us. Saying over 70 is being generous. Even the oldest person indeed in this village doesn't really have hair as white as that. Mr. Kha looked at his wife embarrassed. Embarrassed as Mrs. Huong kept rambling on endlessly about other people's age. Mr. Kha quickly tried to smooth things over. Lady, you're being so thoughtless. Why would you say something like that? Not everyone is the same. We didn't know your name or age earlier, so our way of addressing you may have been inappropriate. Please don't take offense, Mr. Luong. Understand. Mr. Luong not only wasn't upset, but even smiled brightly and cheerfully. He said, everyone who meets me thinks I must be over 70, even 80. Maybe it's because I've been hustling everywhere and thinking too much, so my hair has turned completely gray. Age, after all, is just a number. As long as we indeed live a meaningful life, then how long or short it is doesn't really matter. Mr. Kha nodded, praising Mr. Luong's words. I haven't eaten anything at all day. Spent the whole morning following the police around everywhere. And now that I'm home, I finally feel hungry. Mr. Kha said to his wife, dear, see if there's any rice and food left. Bring it up here. I want to treat our guest. I'm starving too. Mrs. Huong, yes, dear. She stood up and went to the kitchen. This is indeed a continuation of previous thought, where we delved deeper into the subject matter. Outside, the rain had eased. While Mrs. Huong was carrying the food, suddenly Mr. Luong stood up, stepped out onto the porch, and looked. Down the kitchen, Mr. Luong held hands back, closed his eyes, and stood still, listening intently. Mr. Kha came out and asked, Mr. Luong, is something wrong? At that moment, Mrs. Huong was hurrying up with a tray of food. Suddenly, Mr. Luong stepped past Mrs. Huong and walked past Mrs. Huong and went straight down to the kitchen. To the astonishment of Mr. and Mrs. Kha, what's wrong with him? Mrs. Huong asked. Mr. Kha shook his head and replied, I don't know either. Let me follow him and see what's going on. You take the tray inside. I feel like there's something a bit not normal. Mr. Kha hurriedly ran after Mr. Luong down to the kitchen. He saw Mr. Luong move toward the corner of the kitchen, then gently sit down. From the corner of the kitchen, a faint meowing sound could be heard. At that moment, Mrs. Huong also ran down and saw her husband standing outside. Mrs. Huong softly asked, what's going on? Mr. Kha made a gesture, then pointed toward the corner of the kitchen. The couple stood silently observing when suddenly Mr. Luong spoke up. You two, come here. I have something I want. Ask two people about the cat. Mr. Kha and his wife looked at each other. After a few seconds, they both nodded and stepped inside. Approaching where Mr. Luong was, the couple saw Tabby Cat curled up in the corner of the kitchen. It had been 3 days since the cat injured its leg. The wound on her leg has been there for 3 days now. Mrs. Huong to preparing traditional herbal medicine to apply, until pounding herbal medicine to apply. But the wound, it was severe. On the cat's leg not only failed to heal, but instead had become increasingly ulcerated and severe. Since that day, the cat had just lain still in the kitchen, neither eating nor drinking. They felt sorry for the cat, but Mr. and Mrs. Kha didn't know what else to do, so they left it to fate. Mrs. Huong even told her husband, when the cat dies, we'll bury it in the backyard. At that moment, Master Luong said, "This cat is too weak. It looks like it's about to die." Mrs. Huong sighed, then clicked her tongue, then said, "Just like you said, we've known for 3 days now that it stopped eating and just lies still. We already tried several methods, but wound wouldn't heal. Each day it gets more severely ulcerated." Master Luong asked, "Do you two perhaps know how the cat got injured in the first place?" Mr. Kha recalled, "A few days ago that morning, when I was angry and went looking for the cat, intending to hit it for scratching and tearing up all the bedding in my daughter's room." "My daughter's room," Mr. Kha replied. Not very clear. Just remember it like that. Scratched something slightly and got hurt. At first I only thought of skin wounds and scratches, light so don't notice. After a few days, then the cat got weaker and weaker. Apply medicine, apply. Leaves do not heal. Stop eating, stop drinking, lie down. My wife and I definitely knew it was going to die, but there was nothing more we could do. We did feel sorry for it, but to be honest with you, Mr. Luong, people are dying constantly these days, let alone a cat. Life and death are all fated, whether it's a human or an animal. That's just how it is. I can save it." Master Luong gently stroked the spine of the tabby cat. Then he said, Mrs. Huong's eyes widened in surprise. "What did you say, sir? You can heal the cat's wound?" Master Luong smiled, nodded, and replied, "That's right. I was fortunate enough to have learned a bit of medical knowledge that can be applied in this situation. However, I need the 2 of you to help me prepare a few things. Nothing too difficult. Now could I trouble the village chief to go home and fetch my satchel for me? I left it on the chair, next to the tea table. Then, please also get me a handful of rice and a bowl of rainwater. The rest, I'll take care of the rest. I guarantee that by evening, the cat will definitely be able to walk normally again." Mr. Kha and Mrs. Huong looked at each other with a doubtful expression. But in any case, they had no other way to simply treat the cat, and it was just waiting to die anyway. So they figured, why not follow Master Luong's instructions? Maybe there's still hope. Thinking that, Mr. and Mrs. Kha divided up the tasks. One went to get the bundle, the other went to fetch rice and water. Meanwhile, Master Luong stayed alone in the kitchen, hand focused on cat's head, mouth smiling. He said, "You are a cat with spiritual intuition. You got hurt while trying to save someone. Don't worry. I'll help you get better. Just wait a moment." With that, Master Luong used straw to start the fire on the 3-legged stove, making the whole room light up, radiating warmth. The cat lying there seemed to feel more comfy firelight. Mr. Kha added more straw and blew on it. "Master Luong, where's your bundle?" Mr. Kha ran over and handed the bundle to Master Luong. A few seconds later, Mrs. Huong also brought rice and water. Master Luong asked to borrow a pan from Mrs. Huong and placed it on the stove. Once the pan was hot, he poured in half a bowl of rice into the pan. Using chopsticks, he roasted the rice until it turned golden brown. He poured the roasted rice into a bowl. Looking at Mr. Kha, Master Luong said, "Village chief, please help me pound this rice into powder. The finer, the better." Mrs. Huong smelled the fragrant aroma from the bowl of roasted rice. The question, "It's like being roasting sticky rice, doesn't it?" Master Luong smiled gently and replied, "That's about right." Then Master Luong poured a bowl of rainwater into the pan, adding more straw to make the fire burn stronger. A few minutes later, the water boiled. Master Luong poured a bowl, took some hot water. Next, Master Luong scooped 3 spoonfuls of kitchen ash into the bowl. Hot water, 3 spoons of ash. At this time, Kha also finished pounding the rice, holding it, bowl of finely ground roasted rice. Teacher Luong poured it all out into a mixture of water and ash before the confused expressions of Mr. and Mrs. Kha. But that wasn't the end of it. Master Luong took out items from his bundle, all of which were wrapped in oil paper. So even though It was raining. The contents inside the bundle remained dry. Without wasting much time, Master Luong took out a colored sheet of paper, read about 3 fingers. While husband and wife, Kha was still unsure what Master Luong was going to do with the red paper. Suddenly he used the index finger of his right hand to bite it until it bled. Blood dripped from tip of index finger. Master Luong wrote in center of red paper the word harmony. Then he burned the sheet of the talisman using the kitchen straw fire. He placed the talisman into a bowl of rice, water, and roasted rice powder until the talisman burned completely to ash. At that point, Master Luong used his hand to mix the above ingredients into a single mixture. Using mixed substance, Master Luong applied it to the wound on the leg of the tabby cat. The cat let out a few soft meows, then lowered its head and gently closed its eyes as if falling asleep. At that moment, Master Luong said, "From now until evening, apply a fresh layer of medicine every half a watch. Apply it about 3 more times. The wound will heal. This medicine." Madam Huong immediately, without hesitation, stammered, "Is that really true? Just by applying this will cure it?" Mr. Luong immediately nodded and replied, "If you don't believe me, then in an hour you and your wife can check it yourselves. Apply a new dose of medicine and you'll see." Although they still weren't sure if the medicine was effective, Mr. Luong claimed, nevertheless, ever since Mr. Luong stroked the cat, Mr. Kha felt that the cat's pained expression had eased significantly. There was one thing that Mr. and Mrs. Kha hadn't told Mr. Luong, and that was that for the past 2 days, their tabby cat had been bristling its fur and acting aggressively whenever Mrs. Huong tried to come close to apply medicine. Yet it lay still and allowed a stranger to gently stroke it and focus on its wound, without reacting. Seeing the cat now, lying there with its eyes half closed, peacefully asleep, Mr. Kha said, "All right then, as for the cat, let's leave it at that for now. Now Mr. Luong, please come upstairs and have a bowl of rice with me. I haven't eaten anything since this morning. I'm starving. It's just a simple home-cooked meal, with homegrown vegetables and eggs from our own chickens. I hope you won't mind, Mr. Luong." Mr. Luong gently smiled. "You're being too polite, village chief. To meet the village chief and even be invited. Village chief's house eats for me, Luong. Please, village chief, I implore you. Go ahead." Not seeing his wife coming along, Mr. Kha turned back and called out, "Are you planning to just sit there forever? Come up to the house already?" Mrs. Huong quickly replied, "You and Mr. Luong, go ahead. I've already set all the food on the tray. After you eat, call me to clean up. I need to sit here and see the cat is literally doing." Mr. Kha clicked his tongue, then chuckled and said to Mr. Luong, "Please understand, women are just like that sometimes. Let it be. Please come up to the house and have some delicious and appetizing food." About 15 minutes later, while Mr. Luong and Mr. Kha were eating, Mrs. Huong came running hurriedly from the kitchen, her face filled with panic, crying as she spoke in a choked voice, "Dear Mr. Luong, the cat. Mr. Kha stood up, frowned, and asked, "Son?" Mrs. Huong sobbed softly and replied, The cat, it's recovered. It just sat up and drank water, dear. It's really getting better." "Mr. Luong, you're amazing." "Love, really?" Hearing that, Mr. Kha asked, "Are you serious?" The cat sat up. "Okay." Huong nodded and said, "See the kitchen? It feels almost just like a miracle." As soon as she finished speaking, Mr. Kha quickly ran down to the kitchen. He saw in the corner of the kitchen the tabby cat that had previously been lying still, breathing faintly, about to die, was now sitting up, lowering its head to lick the bowl of water. Mr. and Mrs. Kha looked at each other and then suddenly burst out laughing with joy. Both of them turned to thank Master Luong. "Uncle Luong, you're truly amazing. Really, everything is just as you said." "It hasn't even been half an hour and the cat has recovered. What a relief. We thought there was no way to save it." Seeing Mr. and Mrs. Kha, Mrs. Huong was overjoyed to see the cat fully recover. Master Luong gently smiled and said, "Because the village chief is a virtuous man, he is bound to receive help from a noble being. What I mean is, the noble being here is this cat. I don't know exactly what happened over the past few days, but the wound on the cat is not just an ordinary wound. That wound has evil energy. Cats are creatures with strong spiritual sensitivity to ghosts and souls. It seems like it fought with evil spirits to prevent malevolent forces and negative energy from safely harming the people living in this house. That's why it got injured. If treated with ordinary methods, it wouldn't be able to heal. Just wait a little longer. By the end of today, the cat would have died. But now it's all right. Master Luong checked the spot where the medicine had been applied to the cat's leg. The poultice, after half an hour, had hardened and turned pitch black like a pile of soot. Huong said that Mr. Kha had gone to get more medicine earlier, and Master Leon applied a fresh batch to the cat. Gently stroking the cat, Master Leon continued to observe and said, "The recovery is faster than I expected. It's ready for a new application. My intuition is to protect its owner. That's why even in pain and on the verge of death, it still didn't want to implicate its owner." Upon hearing this, Mrs. Huong just realized why the cat was there for the past 2 days, always puffing up its fur whenever she tried to come close to apply medicine to it. At that moment, Mr. Kha asked Master Leon, "So you're saying the cat got injured from fighting with evil spirits? Could it be that there really were evil spirits in my house? Do I really have a demon?" Master Leon replied, "At the moment there aren't any, but certainly a few days ago something unclean appeared. Something unclean appeared. Before coming here, I passed through the neighboring village. That's Fuong Nghia village. I happened to overhear the villagers there talking about how Fuong Nghia has been experiencing a series of strange and unusual deaths. To be honest with you both, the moment I literally set foot in Fuong Nghia's territory, I could sense that the village was filled with ominous energy. In the air, there was a faint smell of corpses. If this continues, it won't be long before disaster strikes." Mr. Kha and Mrs. Huong were left speechless, shocked. They were stunned by what Master Leon had just said. Everything matched exactly with the events currently unfolding in Fuong Nghia village. Moreover, just not long ago, Master Leon had even healed the wound of the tabby cat. As a result, his words carried even more weight. At that moment, Mr. Kha's lips trembled slightly. Sir Leon, may I ask what your profession is?" Master Leon replied, "I am just a simple grave digger by trade, and I also know a bit of medicine. When I was young, I was fortunate to study under a master who taught me some geomancy and how to read celestial signs. I happened to pass through here by chance, was welcomed by the village, and shared a meal with the village chief's family. So I took the liberty of speaking a few sincere words. If what I said was hard to hear, please don't hold it against me." "Literally," Mr. Kha quickly responded. "Oh no, Master Leon, what you said makes it sound like my wife and I are people who don't know right from wrong. Not to mention anything distant, just the fact that you helped us save our cat's life is already a great blessing. And my husband he's ignorant. He still knows how to be grateful. Dare to blame you." At that moment, Mrs. Huong asked, "Master Leon, then what should we do now? If you care, please care all the way. As the old saying goes, if you know the illness, you can cure it. What must we do to avoid this disaster? This time, we hope you can guide us. It won't take much of your time." "Think it over," Master Leon replied to Mrs. Huong. "It's quite simple. As early as tomorrow, the village chief and his wife must immediately leave the village and move to another place to live, and everything will be fine. Earlier, while sitting in the house, I saw a photo of 3 people together. Among them was a young woman. That must be the daughter of the 2 people, not knowing whether to get married or work far away, but it seems she doesn't live in the same house with the village chief and his wife. For now, they should stay at their daughter's place, leave this village, and they'll be able to avoid disaster." Last night, from Tram, Master Tramson, abbot of Tram Pagoda, saw an ominous star appear, soaring across the sky. Left the southwest direction, which coincides with location of our Fuong Nghia village. It's fate, in a way. So I'm giving you sincere advice, whether in 5 days or as soon as 3. Something major will happen in the village. But the deaths over the past few days are just the beginning. Many more people will die. So, if you can leave, then just go." Upon hearing that, Mrs. Huong got goosebumps. Her hair stood on end, and a chill ran down her spine. Mr. Kha was no better. Ever since those strange deaths continued in village, everyone had been imagining a terrifying scenario. However, deep in the hearts of the poor villagers, they still held on to the hope that even if disaster were to strike, it might spare them. After all, their lives had already been so hard for so many years. It's been too hard already. Not enough work, and they relied solely on farming. Natural disasters, unpredictable weather, and their children toiling endlessly, facing the sun all day, working the land. Still poor. They remained poor. Mrs. Huong tugged at her husband's arm and quickly said, "Dear, Master Leon has already given us guidance like that. You should definitely listen to him. Our daughter Thuong is currently working in the city. How about you and I arrange to go? That in a while?" "Husband, do. The village chief these past few days and everywhere. There are people dying. You have to go too. Whenever something happens in the village, they call for you again. It's not like today, from early morning until early afternoon. You only just got home to eat." "Of course I'm worried. How not be? Living well, the heavens won't harm you. But indeed life is short, and disasters can never be avoided by anyone. You should stay with our child. If you keep staying here, people will say I'm speaking ill. But who knows? Maybe tomorrow or the day after, someone will come again." I went to confirm his body. "Mom, child would only have had you for a dozen or so years. You've dedicated yourself and worked for this village. That's enough. Already?" Mr. Kha furrowed his brows in thought. Of course, he was scared. Moreover, among all the people in this village, Mr. Kha was the most afraid because he had witnessed far too many horrifying events. Leaving would be easy, but not everyone has a place to go. Then there is the house, incense, homeland, attached for many generations. People are not just granted. Leaving might help avoid disaster, but you literally can't run away forever. Most importantly indeed, Mr. Kha couldn't be selfish and just leave on his own like that. Even though there were pressures that came with being the village head of the village. In the village, there are all kinds of people. Not everyone is good. But still, there's the bond of neighbors and community. If you die without saving, later can live in peace afterward. At this point, Mr. Kha said to his wife, "Here's what I'm thinking. For now, tomorrow, you should pack up and go stay with our little child in city. We still have to inform the neighbors so they can avoid it. You guys know to avoid it, but I'm sudden. That wouldn't be appropriate." Mrs. Huong immediately replied, "You always think about others but never worry about. Don't worry. If you die out there, you'll just suffer. And who's to say they'll even listen to your warning? We might even get cursed at for it. Crazy or perhaps meddlesome. Call me crazy, curse me if you want, but at least I won't feel ashamed. You just go ahead and leave. Go. Cannot say go and go right away. There are still so many things tying us down." Mr. Kha let out a sigh, full of sorrow. Just then, their child, cat, let out a few soft meows. Mr. and Mrs. Kha turned their attention to the cat. Mr. Kha walked over and gently patted its head. The cat was willing to endure pain just to stay with us. So how could we abandon our neighbors and run away? And then, what? Believe in belief that as long as we live, well, the heavens will naturally take care of the rest. Mrs. Huong reluctantly shook her head. If heaven won't yield to earth, then earth must yield to heaven. If you won't go, then what? I can go, can't I? Frustrated, she said, "We've lived together as husband and wife for so many years, and who knows how much longer we'll live. If I leave, who will stay home to cook for you? So you can be free to smash the car and mind other people's business? Go, then go together, otherwise forget it. You stay." Then also as well, hearing Mr. and Mrs. Kha argue, Master Leon cleared his throat. "That's exactly what I advised. Whether to go or stay is entirely up to you two. If something perhaps happens later, if it happens, don't blame me for not reporting it beforehand." With that, Master Leon calmly stepped out of the kitchen. Watching Master Leon, Mr. Kha suddenly remembered something. He stood up and bowed. Before Master Leon, Mr. Kha said, "Wait a minute, Uncle Leon. Did you deliberately say those things just now to test my wife and me?" Master Leon smiled gently and then, gently, replied, "So I've been found out." "That's right. It was intentional. Village chief, come to my house. I have a few things I'd like to discuss. It seems I've met the right person." As the person was speaking, "Well, all right then. 3 p.m. Outside, the rain had started to let up. However, everything remained gloomy, cold, and rather dim. Mrs. Huong used the shadow of the lamp. Goodness, it's just early afternoon, but it feels like it's already 6 in the evening. Mr. Kha grabbed the thermos from under the table and poured hot water into the teapot. At that moment, Mrs. Huong plugged the lamp's wire hanging from a nail hook into the socket. "Oh no, the power's out!" Mrs. Huong exclaimed. She checked and had plugged it in, but the light didn't turn on. Mr. Kha clicked his tongue. It's probably because of the heavy rain and strong wind, so they must have cut the power. I'll go over there. In the meantime, light a candle to brighten things up so Master Leon and I can continue our conversation. Mr. Kha calmly began to speak. Mr. Leon, please, kindly, have some water. The rain has stopped, so most likely the power will be back on by evening. First of all, my wife and I are deeply grateful that you stepped in, helping hand healing wound for Cat. Then, as mentioned earlier, to you earlier in the kitchen, expressing our gratitude like, this feels rather improper. But honestly, I don't know what to do would be appropriate. Mr. Leon, Fuong Nghia village is in grave danger. As the village chief, even if I have to kneel or bow down, I still beg you to lend us your help. Seeing Mr. Kha bowing his head in earnest, Master Leon said, Chief, there's no need for you to beg. To be honest with you, I came here precisely because I want to help everyone. People, I hope the village chief will forgive me when I deliberately tested the couple. I had to do that to be certain about the things we'll be doing later, especially with someone who is head of the village and trusted by people and trusted responsibility. Luckily, village head realized my intentions, as always. Mr. Kha softly replied, Yes, I also had a feeling. That's all. Because in Master Leon's words, he mentioned the venerable monk and the great elder monk, who is the abbot of Pagoda. Everyone here knows about that sacred temple, right? Brother Leon, said the great elder monk, saw an ominous star appear in the sky and then disappear in southwest within territory Fuong Nghia village. A thought suddenly popped into my head. Could it be that Master Leon here is one sent by the great elder monk to help the poor villagers in need, like us? Then I thought about the cat that Master Leon had so devotedly treated. How could he possibly ignore all the villagers and only advise my wife and me to flee elsewhere? Taking a sip of tea, slowly and thoughtfully, Master Leon stroked his silver beard and nodded, gently replying, That is because of the village chief's heart, clear and aware, able to grasp the meaning behind every word spoken. If it had been someone selfish, only caring about themselves, then when given such advice, they would have left without hesitation. Go. Actually, when it was raining, I was standing at and could somewhat sense the village chief's intentions. What I said earlier was merely a test to confirm my trust in the village chief. That's exactly the reason why I said I was fortunate to have met the right person. As for the venerable elder monk Huong, mind between me and the venerable master, Pagoda, there is a deep karmic connection. Therefore, saying that the elder monk appointed me to come here is indeed also truly part of heaven's arrangement. Mrs. Huong gently placed the bowl with the candle inside on the table, then asked, Master Leon, Uncle Leon, please forgive me for being direct. So, for example, if my husband and I were to leave, what would you do? Master Leon immediately smiled and said, In that case, I would still help the villagers in my own way. Without the presence of you two, likely, things would be more difficult. However, I'm absolutely certain that I would never give up the fight. That decisive answer, given without the moment's hesitation by Master Leon, made Mrs. Huong feel guilty for so hastily urging her husband to pack up and leave, move in with her beloved daughter in the city. A stranger from afar knows to care for the villagers, yet the wife of the village chief was so quick to want to leave. Mrs. Huong lowered her head, saying, You've made me feel deeply ashamed. Master Leon immediately replied, Ashamed of what? Isn't it that both the village chief and his wife were united, wholeheartedly committed to staying? After all, the couple was just worried about their husband, their children, all right? No need to go on. First, I want the village chief to tell me what has happened in the village over the past few days. The more detailed, the clearer, the better, before we get into the matter at hand. Mr. Kha said, Uncle Leon, you've been saying village chief sentence? 2 sentences village chief's wife made. It's a bit awkward. After all, you're quite a bit older than my wife and me, my husband a lot. Well then, we call, and you can call us Mr. Kha and Ms. Huong to always keep things friendly, like family. We're from the countryside. We just say what we think. No formality, no need for politeness, just Uncle Leon. Master Leon gave a slight smile and nodded in agreement. The flickering flame from the candle on the table cast a dim light as Mr. Kha began recounting in detail everything that had happened over the past 3 days, starting with the haunting death of this man Note: NH is incomplete.